Who will be the new Southern Miss Golden Eagles head football coach? It's Locked On Sunbelt.
You are Locked On Sunbelt, your daily podcast on the Sunbelt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Welcome to today's episode. Is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, joining me on today's episode about the Southern Miss coaching search, which we'll probably be doing a lot of over the next couple of months, is Andrew Abadie from Pine Belt News and Pine Belt Sports. He had that list of candidates we talked about in yesterday's episode, and so we're going forward with that. What is Jeremy McLean's job description for his new upcoming head coach? They are using a searching firm. And the other thing I want to know is how quickly are they going to get this done, right? I mean, the point of letting your coach go now is you get a head start. It's only Southern Miss and East Carolina who have job openings right now. That's going to multiply by the time we get towards the end of the season and maybe even into mid-November. So you got to do all your due diligence now and hopefully beating somebody to the punch, so to speak. So let's get to it. We have Andrew Abadie from Pine Belt News and Pine Belt Sports. He is Locked On Sunbelt. Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. I'm your host, Dave Schultz from Pine Belt News. Andrew Abadie covering Southern Miss, beat writer, and of course, one of the two coaches fired already this year, Matt Houston at East Carolina and Will Hall at Southern Miss. Unfortunately, Andrew, when we saw the way that the quarterback was playing, regardless who it was, this firing was inevitable because they just have not been able to get a quarterback going when Will Hall is there. The best quarterback may have been Frank Gore Jr. with the superback, but it just, they haven't had a quarterback throw for 2,000 yards. And when other teams are getting 4,000 to 5,000 yards, it's not good.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not just quarterback. I do think they've had serviceable guys, and, it's more about making the right decision at quarterback. Trey Lowe was solid the year they won the bowl game, but for whatever reason, they didn't want to play him until the second half of the year, which is when they started to do a little bit better. Honestly, I think they have two decent quarterbacks here. Offensive line is just something they've never been able to get right during the Will Hall tenure. That's partly why you've had so many different guys under center in 4 years here. Defense after Armstrong left for Florida, Austin Armstrong, they haven't been able to get that right either. Clay Bignell has struggled. Dan O'Brien was one and done. So, it's just, they've really missed on assistant coaches more than anything. And that trickles down into a bunch of different areas. They've been able to recruit well. And a lot of those coaches, that's their specialty. But when it comes onto the field, it just hasn't been there for them.
Ty Keys is available if he wants to come back.
I don't think, Ty was a really good kid. He's right. I know he's had a solid tenure at East Mississippi, although they're kind of struggling right now. It was weird what worked out for him at Louisiana Tech, but, it's just one of the many weird stories of quarterbacks at Southern Miss in the last really 5 years, even before Will Hall. It's been a strange string of guys.
So it was an interesting press availability. It wasn't really a press conference. Was Jeremy McLean sitting at a table and you guys were sitting like a boardroom or something like that? And you kind of were having a conversation. Tell us about the conversation with the athletic director, Jeremy McLean.
Yeah, so on Monday, and honestly, let's lead off with saying very refreshing for Southern Miss to kind of be open about this. Most athletic departments are, they clamor up after, kind of falling on their face, and it's a lot of speculation, and it's painful. So, kudos to Southern Miss. We saw Pete Thamel's report, and USM had their stuff out 2 minutes after. There was no having to hunt down secondary sources and stuff. So, they jumped ahead on things to what you mentioned. Sometimes we'll have press conferences exclusively with Jeremy, and in some ways press conferences will allow fans and stuff. So it's just more formal setting, so to speak. The last time we had something like that is when they unveiled the renovations for Reed Green Coliseum. But there was a lot to talk about. In some ways, he said a lot. In some ways, he said nothing, which is to be expected. With you got to keep your cards close. But they're using a search firm to aid in their search for the next head coach. They've from the way Jeremy kind of worded it, they've secured the money for the buyout, so it's not going to impact the athletic department that much. I thought that was really big for them. So that was kind of the few key hit points. The other thing that I think a lot of the media was concerned about, not concerned, but wanted to know, was the last go around when he was looking for a football coach back in 2020 when things were weird. He wanted somebody with head coaching experience and had ties to the region. And that's been kind of his main two things on every hiring he's done. And so somebody asked, is regional ties, is that going to be a priority? And, Jeremy said it's on the list, but it's not high up on the list. So, they're definitely, you could tell they are approaching this much differently than when they did in 2020, as they should. A lot has changed in 4 years.
Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day with Pine Belt News, beat writer for Southern Miss, Andrew Abadie. All right, what about the head coaching? Does he need somebody that was a head coach, or could he go get a coordinator?
Yeah, I mean, so I think the formula right now, and we're seeing it in the Sun Belt and Indiana especially, is go get a guy at a lower level who's winning. He takes his entire staff with him, with 10 to 15 of his best players, and they seem to plug in right away. We're seeing it at Texas State, JMU, Indiana. That seems to be the formula right now. But whether or not Southern Miss does that is to be seen. There are some hot commodity names that have popped up in the OC ranks. The idea of a Power 4 coordinator coming back down to be a head coach, that those days seem to be ending, if not done. So, do they get another coordinator again? I don't know. There are some good ones, because I mostly say that because Will Hall was a coordinator at Tulane, and so that kind of bit them. But, he also had head coaching experience. So I don't know. I don't know how they go about doing this. A lot of people are wanting an outsider instead of somebody with regional ties, but there's going to be this is going to be a stranger coaching search for Southern Miss than in the past. Normally you have an idea of where they're going to go, but I don't this time.
So Brian Harsin would be an example of a guy who didn't have any regional ties to Alabama, but that seemed to be he just didn't want to do the recruiting at all. All right, I don't know anything about high school recruiting in the state of Alabama, but I know, after I talk to the AD and the realtor, the third phone call I'm making is to Thompson High School, and he hadn't talked to Thompson High a year into it. So there is part of that, but there's also, you got to want to, and it wouldn't seem like it. You either can recruit or you can't recruit. And so I'm not sure it matters where you are, right? You can either schmooze or you can't schmooze. And that's what recruiting is. And obviously it's a little bit different these days. Like you said, it's different from 4 years ago, but you think the whole, Kane Womack coming from Indiana, going to South Alabama, those days are over. Defensive coordinator there, going to head coaching gig to get something under his, get some head coaching experience before moving on up, because he did not. I think the reason he's at Alabama is he did not get considered for Mississippi State the past two chances, and that's why he did what he did. Although the current head coach of Mississippi State is not doing all that well.
Yeah. So the interesting thing about Kane Womack is that Southern Miss alum, right? And
right.
He was available. Supposedly he was one of the guys on the short list. From the stories I've heard, that he felt the South Alabama gig was a better fit. And honestly, it was at the time. But I think the trend, especially in the last Sun Belt, I guess coaching carousel, we saw a lot of head coaches give up being head coach so they can go be coordinators at Power 4 programs for two reasons. One being you're getting way more money, and the other is so you don't have to deal with NIL stuff. And I completely understand that. And we saw it. I think it was at Georgia State. We saw it at South Alabama. There's a few stops that's happened. So, and I think that's a trend you might continue to see. So,
well, I think those were all specific cases, right? Chip Kelly did it from UCLA. He left, but he's older, right? And the Georgia State coach did it because his family was in South Carolina. And like I mentioned, Kane Womack did it because he just wasn't even considered. He wasn't even considered for the Mississippi State job, I don't think, either time.
I just think, I do think, and we're seeing it with coaches retire too. There's a group, I mean, there is an era of coaches that don't want to deal with NIL. They would rather just be
Right.
coaches. I mean, look at Virginia in basketball. He stepped away because he don't want to deal with it. And we're seeing that a lot. Southern Miss's previous great baseball coach, Scott Berry, didn't want to deal with NIL anymore. I get it. Like, it's a new world for head coaches right now. And there are guys who just want to coach. And the only way you're going to do that is as an assistant. And if I can get paid way more money to be a coordinator at an Alabama and have less responsibility, heck yeah, I'm going to do that.
All right, let's take a time out. When we come back, Andrew will name a couple of potential names for the Southern Miss head coaching job. He will do that right after I tell you about LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have time or resources to hire. And right now, 2.5 million small businesses are using LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Dave Schultz, Lockdown Sunbelt, your team every day. Let's get back to our conversation with Pine Belt Sports beat writer for Southern Miss. He is Andrew Abadie, and he names a couple of interesting potential head coaching candidates for the Southern Miss Golden Eagles. Talking to Andrew Abadie from Pine Belt Sports, Pine Belt News as well. It is Lockdown Sunbelt, your team every day. We're talking about the Southern Miss coaching search. So this is being released on Wednesday. Any more names pop up on Tuesday that caught your attention?
Yeah, I think one name that is going to be at least early on serious in the mix is Brennan Marion, UNLV offensive coordinator, who's kind of a hot name up and coming. I know there's some interest. He doesn't have exactly ties per se directly to Mississippi, but I know he's worked with a lot of guys that have close Mississippi ties as well as Southern Miss ties. He works with Akeem Davis at UNLV, who's been a very highly touted assistant coach there. Akeem Davis, Southern Miss alum. So, I think that's a name to really watch out for. I think somebody like just on the wish list and somebody you probably have to at least knock on the door for is Bill Clark, former UAB coach who turned things around there. And, he said earlier in September he's ready to come back coaching if it's the right fit. Is Southern Miss the right fit? Your guess is as good as mine, but it's in the same domain. I would think Bill Clark's just waiting for Trent Dilfer to get axed so he can get his old job back. But I think those are two names to really that we'll have to wait and see that might pop up. And then, of course, I think anybody who is a successful FCS head coach and they're not making as much money doing that as they would at Southern Miss you have to be on the table.
All right. So a couple of things with those names, and certainly so timing is going to be an issue with that. So with UNLV coach, with all due respect from Southern Miss, he's running one of the best offenses in the country. He would seem to have an opportunity to go somewhere else. Just a thought. I don't know if it's going to be Power 5, but a little bit more prestigious. And I love me some Southern Miss. I think it is a different fan base than what the Cajuns have, because they split it with LSU, whereas Southern Miss has their own fan base. They don't pay attention to Ole Miss and Mississippi State. So I love me some Southern Miss. So I think the offensive coordinator from UNLV is going to go maybe somewhere better, but timing is going to be an issue because he's not going to take the Southern Miss job while he still has this job, I don't think. Whereas they could go all Clay Helton and hire Bill Clark, and he could go watch the team in November and methodically make some changes.
Well, Will Hall was still at Tulane when he was hired as an OC. So, and he came down and was able to watch the last game of the year here. So it all depends.
But that was at the end of the season. That's at the end of the season.
Yeah, with one game left to go.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
But you have to have, and this is anybody who's in this head coaching search, not just Southern Miss. You got to have your guy before December starts, because the early signing period's the 4th. The transfer portal opens the 9th. Everybody's going to have brand new teams by mid-December, because that's just the world we live in now. But, I've heard through the grapevines, I think Marion is somebody that there's interest from one side or the other. If that pans out, your guess is as good as mine. But, I think if you're Southern Miss, he checks a lot of boxes, because he's just enough of an outsider, but has just enough ties to where it kind of fits the stigma. But again, the winning formula lately is finding a guy who's a proven head coach. He doesn't have head coaching experience yet, but I do think, like you mentioned, I think there's going to be plenty of opportunities for him. And I think somewhere there's a podcast or a show that he went on and said his goal is to end up coaching in the SEC one day. This would be your route to do that. And for Southern Miss fans, they want to see Southern Miss kind of do the James Madison route, embrace the stepping stone type of idea, do a lot of winning in 4 years, and then hopefully find your next guy on the next go around.
So also let's throw this wrench in there, because you got to love it when you put out an article at 7:54 a.m. and one of the guys in the article gets fired in the middle of the day and Seth Luttrell. So would he take an Oklahoma offensive coordinating job before he took the Southern Miss head coaching job?
Well, he was fired from Oklahoma.
No, not Seth Luttrell, not Seth, the UNLV OC.
I think it depends on what you want to do.
Is that your formula? Talking about your formula. That's the formula.
Yeah. Again, but this is a guy who's it's not a head coach. This is an OC, a coordinator. Right. So if you're wanting to one day aspire to be a head coach,
sure.
Yeah, of course you're going to go to a program that is a head coaching job. But I did put Seth Luttrell, but I put him on there because he got fired.
Okay. Oh, yeah, all right.
That's why I put him on there. And he had success against Southern Miss. And I mean, North Texas was kind of a doormat before he got there. I mean, they've had, it wasn't the best success ever, but they were a consistent program that he kind of turned around there. That seems to be something Southern Miss could really use right now. And like I said, he's available. So we'll see what they want to do with that.
Well, I do want to talk to you about that. We're talking with Andrew Abadie from Pine Belt News and Pine Belt Sports, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day, about the Southern Miss coaching search. Okay, so you say by December 1st, but that takes away all the advantages that Southern Miss has now. I mean, I don't expect them to have somebody in by, Halloween, but I mean, they got to have somebody hired by the middle of November, because it's them and ECU.
Yeah. And McLean has said the plan is the end of November. I mean, so they'll probably say something, I would say, around Thanksgiving or something like that. But you'd have to think they're going to have their finalists figured out at some point.
Way before that, or else you lose all the advantage that you have by firing the head coach now.
Yeah. No, but I'm just saying that's the emergency, that this is the deadline that they have to hit by, basically. That's anybody who fires their head coach midseason. And also, you never know what other, if this is on the table for you, what Power 4 coaches get canned and are wanting another head coaching job right away. You have to hope that's on the table for you too.
Well, there's a former Cajuns coach that seems to be on the hot seat. If that's something that he aspires to, I don't know if that's something that he would do, but Billy Napier's coming off a huge win actually against Kentucky. Probably could have, if not should have beaten, certainly had a chance to beat Tennessee. So I don't know if that seat's cooling off. I mean, is that a name that would Southern Miss even consider that?
Yeah, I mean, he's proven winner in the Sun Belt. Also, fun fact, his full name is William Hall Napier. So do that info with you will. Hold
on. So that eliminates him from the job.
Hey, I mean, he did a lot more winning in the Sun Belt.
He certainly did, yes.
But yeah, I think another one to potentially watch for, maybe Neil Brown at West Virginia. I mean, he had Troy going for a while, and
he sure did.
I know the West Virginia faithful, even though he had 9 wins last year, it was his first kind of big season there. They're kind of ready for him to go. I think that's kind of in terms of head coaches to watch for. And then God, Auburn's so weird. Who knows what happens there? Hugh Freeze is a USF
No,
alum. I know.
no. They don't want any part of that. Why would you want a part of that?
Well, he's an alum. That's the only reason I'd say.
Oh,
But
okay.
another reason to mention that is Derrick Nix, Auburn's offensive coordinator, who was a guy that was in the mix on the last go around, is a kind of a name that has popped up. He's also a Southern Miss alum. He's coached college in Mississippi for a very long time.
Did I miss the powerful Auburn offense over the last month and a half?
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying,
okay.
like, he's a guy that they have liked over the years, and he had a lot of success at Ole Miss and Mississippi State as an assistant.
I think his brother may be a better option.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's had success at Tarleton State, but he did kind of bounce around a good bit before that. I don't know if that's something Southern Miss. I don't know if they're going to go for guys who have direct Southern Miss ties. That's
Sure.
the question, and right. I don't know how this is going to go for them. But I do know that there are names that are going to be thrown around in this coaching search. I would think.
Has there been any talk about how long you expect a coach to be there? Right. I mean, so we may get this great example. And we're talking. All right, let's take one more time out. We'll wrap up our conversation with Andrew Abadie from Pine Belt Sports and Pine Belt News. We'll talk about Southern Miss just looking to right the ship right now. And 3, 2, 1. All right, let's take one more time out. When we come back, Andrew Abadie will talk about just righting the ship, just setting Southern Miss on some sort of correction course. And how did we get here? How did the Southern Miss fall so far so fast? We'll do that after I tell you about FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Liking that Arkansas State -7 more and more. Unfortunately for Troy, Goose Crowder is out for the remainder of the season. Seems like a really good opportunity for what may be a relatively easy cover for the Arkansas State Red Wolves. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Let's wrap up our conversation with Andrew Abadie as Southern Miss just tries to get back to level ground with their head coaching search. And how did we get here? Because Southern Miss was winning bowl games not too long ago, and it has been a mess for almost a decade. And we're talking with Andrew Abadie from Pine Belt News and Pine Belt Sports, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day, about the Southern Miss coaching job, right? And there's nobody more open than John Hartwell of ULM, right? And he actually went on, he's the AD, he went on the radio and said, hey, look, if we win 9 or 10 games this year, we win 9 or 10 games next year. Obviously, our coach is going to be gone. If Bryant Vincent ULM win a Sunbelt championship this year, which certainly they're right there, he's not coming back, right? He's going to get a big-time job moving forward, one would think. Did anyone talk to Jeremy McLean about what are the expectations and how long you can keep a coach if you turn successful?
No, and I think that's because they need success first that's
Sure.
just something that I think that's, kind of a wishful thinking, I guess, kind of way to frame it. No, it wasn't brought up. I think, you hope you get 3 or 4 years out of a guy if you do have some sustainable winning. Obviously ULM is, the big hope, right? In terms of what you'd hope to get. But, I think it's, trying to find somebody who can just get it going at this point.
All right. So I know we're going way out of order in this and this is well before you got here, but I'm trying to figure out what happened to this team. Cause I saw them with Nicky Mullins, I believe, beat the Cajuns in the New Orleans Bowl. Former, LSU quarterback Anthony Jennings was in his umpteenth year playing college football. It was a pretty good football game that Southern Miss was able to hang on. And it seemed like Southern Miss was heading in the right direction. And then all of a sudden, South Alabama goes into Hattiesburg, beats them, and the head coach quits. And then it's all hell breaks loose. And then Will Hall and Kane Womack are hired at their respective schools. And Turns out South Alabama, hammers Southern Miss to begin the next season. And, that's when I sort of joke that, Will Hall needs to cut down on the 5-hour energy or switch to decaf because he took that loss really personally. What happened to the Southern Miss program? Did the money go out from under it? How did we get to this place where Southern Miss was not competitive?
Yeah, so it goes a little back further than Hobson. Actually, that bowl game you referenced was my first year of Hattiesburg. So,
and you didn't say hi to me at the Dome. I'm not happy.
I was a college freshman. I was my first anything. Okay, so anyway, but yeah, money is a lot of it. You kind of go back to the Ellis Johnson winless season debacle, them pushing out Jeff Bauer because he wasn't winning enough. And what happens is it's one big tenure domino effect / perfect storm of circumstances in college football. So from the Southern Miss standpoint, you have, the Ellis Johnson debacle. It sets them in this ridiculous hole financially that they've finally started getting out of in the last couple years. Larry Fedora, although he was successful, didn't leave the athletic budget in good shape after he leaves because of their weird Hawaii Bowl, not wanting the Liberty Bowl thing. After that, they really start to struggle financially. They're going through 5 athletic directors in, I think, a span of 10 years, which is always a great sign of sustainability. So it was a lot of Band-Aids, a lot of self-inflicted wounds. And then Jay Hobson comes in and, off the field, things kind of started to go off the rails with their APR and just problems with, like I said, off the field. And that's something Jeremy McLean has really worked on, Southern Miss's athletic director, of stabilizing and finally getting the budget in green. Will Hall had to work on when he talked about having to get everything right off the field. That's true. So they're finally in this somewhat stable place. But at the same time of Southern Miss killing themselves, you've got the changing scope of football. You've got all of these new Division I schools popping up. The recruiting grounds aren't quite the same. And, it's just one big thing after another of them not being able to adjust because they're kind of declining on their own accord. And so they're finally to a point where they're trying to play catch up. And, of course, the world is changing again with NIL and the transfer portal.
Yeah. So, you got to hit a home run with this. And can't believe I'm going to say this because apparently he hired him before. They're not going down the Chip Lindsey road again. Is that, certainly going to be fun for you. That's good for content, but we're not doing that again, right? We've seen that movie before.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he would be on like the emergency list. He seems to have a good offense in North Carolina. But you have to think if you're looking for a name, then somebody's got head coaching experience. But I don't know. You have to think it's crossed somebody's mind, but I don't. I think he would be on the lower end of options if that's something Chip Lindsey's interested in. But again, your guess is as good as mine on who they land for this coaching job.
That could be one of those, he's not going anywhere for a minute, so we can take him.
Yeah.
Type situations. All right. What else are you doing this week in Pine Belt news and Pine Belt sports?
Yeah, well, I'm taking this weekend off. I'm going
no one said you could do that.
Yeah, Southern Miss is they're on the road to JMU. High school football it's not a fun week here, just in terms of a schedule of games. So I told you off air, I covered a state championship on Friday, did Friday night football, state championship in the morning in Jackson, came back, did Friday night football, Southern Miss game Saturday, coach fired on Sunday night, and then, just the regular grind routine. So I'm kind of ready to take a couple of days off. I don't think anything too crazy could happen at this point. Knock on wood, of course.
You got a wife and kids?
I just got a wiener dog.
Yeah. All right. Suck it up. You can't be that tired.
No, it's just a lot at once, but it's fun though. I'm not complaining.
On a different note, with college hoops just around the corner, Jay Ladner's health.
Yeah, he says he's good to go. He seems to be good. And honestly, Joy Lee McNellis' health, too, is another one to kind of mention.
Yeah.
It's weird to be talking about the coach's health rather than the player's health.
Right.
But Joy seems to have responded well from the radiation and chemo treatment. She's still.
By the way, she's a treat.
She is a character, to say the least. But yeah, they both seem, Jay's in much better shape than he was in, but Joy she's still dealing with stuff, but she's going to just power through it either way. But I will say I am really excited to see the men's team on the hardwood. I do think they have a chance to win the Sun Belt this year.
All right, it is Andrew Abadie from Pine Belt News, Pine Belt Sports. Really appreciate your time. Locked on Sun Belt, your team every day. Take that well-deserved time off in the middle of football season. Why don't you?
Heck yeah.